Separating the facts from the fiction and the Bubba Mises from the bottom line. You are listening to the Sunday Schmooze with the Rabbi and the CEO. I'm Rabbi David Vigler of Chabad Palm Beach Gardens. Mitch Zachary is the CEO of Zachary Financial Consultants. And you can learn more about us online at www.youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens or facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, where we have live interactive daily Torah study. Join me every morning, weekdays, 8:30 to 9:30 a.m., where we study, we learn, we argue, we debate, we criticize, we get together. And that happens on Facebook.
Anytime Jews discuss something.
Absolutely. We have a lot of fun. Facebook.com/Jewish Gardens or YouTube.com/Jewish Gardens. You are listening to the Sunday Schmooze on the radio with Mitch, the CEO. I'm Rabbi David Vigler of Chabad Palm Beach Gardens. And today we've got a big topic to talk about.
We sure do. And it weighs heavily on everybody's minds.
Yeah, this is the secret or the unknown pandemic. One pandemic we all know about, the one that's getting all the publicity, that's the coronavirus pandemic. The healthcare problem. But then there's another pandemic, and that is the economic crisis, which is sweeping through not just this nation, but indeed through the entire world. And this is really a very, very big problem that's happening over here. I had somebody speak to me the other day. He told me that he literally has to choose between paying his rent or buying his medications.
Awful.
Another person called me up. He needs help with paying for food for his family. He couldn't. He literally needed help paying food. Another person medication. Another person rent.
Yeah.
Another person lost his job. This is a challenge. And what we're going to talk about today on the Sunday Schmooze with the Rabbi and CEO, Mitch is a financial consultant and business advisor. So we're going to talk about the body and the soul of the counseling of this crisis, both from a financial perspective as well as from a rabbinical perspective, a spiritual approach. And we hope that you'll find this meaningful.
Well, Rabbi, I just want to say that, my business is mostly in New York and Florida. And for the last month, more than a month, I've been trying to help my clients and friends of friends, relatives, in how to maneuver to best get the federal support that's been available.
That's been pretty amazing that the government is so supportive.
I wouldn't call it amazing. I would call it that's their job.
So they're doing the right thing, though, right?
Mostly, just to briefly go into that, the first stimulus bill had $350 billion or so allocated to small businesses. The real number is $1 trillion that they need.
Oh, what they need.
Right. So last week they passed another $350 billion for small businesses.
Only for small businesses?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
But they consider small business less than 500 employees. So that's pretty bad. Anyway, and it's been rough. It's been really rough for me to have to listen to people, not the listening part, the empathy part of listening to people that have to make a decision. Who are they going to lay off? How much salaries are they going to cut? Knowing full well that they're going to have employees that won't have enough money to make ends meet because of their decisions. And I've been guiding people, a lot of my clients, in how to fairly make these decisions. Of course, how to do it in accordance with still qualifying for federal loans. And it's tough. This has actually been a very emotional, draining time for me, having to help business owners make these very difficult decisions. And as far as employees, unfortunately, and I don't mean this to be political, unfortunately in Florida, the system of obtaining unemployment insurance is very complicated. And I've read many people believe intentionally complicated.
Really?
Not just for these times, but in general. And I've talked with many people that have lost their jobs or been furloughed or got a reduction in pay. that tell me they go on the website and it crashes, it can't handle the load. I had one client that told me the only way he got the unemployment insurance, was by trying at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
So it's been a very financially difficult time for many of you listening.
See, one of our Facebook viewers is telling me Florida unemployment is a disaster, from Daniel.
That's right. It is a disaster, and that's unfortunate. They say the unemployment numbers in Florida, they don't even know the true unemployment numbers in Florida, because so many people, hundreds of thousands of people in all likelihood, are qualified and eligible to collect unemployment, but can't work through the system. And unfortunately, I saw on TV several weeks ago, I mean, some people might not even have computers or internet. And unfortunately, I saw on TV, people lined up, if you can imagine this, hundreds of people lined up to get into an unemployment insurance office. Like, that's the last thing that we want. Well, thankfully, most of them are wearing masks. But that's the last thing we want, is people congregating.
Yeah, you'd want them to do it online.
So my point is not to
You
criticize.
got to risk your life in order to,
Awful.
in order to get that.
But Rabbi, that gets to the whole point of this crisis and what we're talking about now. Should anybody ever have to make the choice between their livelihood and their life? Any thoughts on that?
To be able to make the choice between your livelihood and your life. I'm trying to understand the question. Where do you...
Do I go to work?
Oh, you mean put yourself in danger in order to keep on working to make money?
To support my family, even though I'm risking my life to do it? I say nobody should ever have to make that choice.
Mitch, it's a fascinating conversation. It's really a fascinating question, because in the Shema Yisrael prayer that we say, which is our pledge of allegiance, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. The opening line is, and you shall love God your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your money. What that means is, look at the order. With all your heart, that's good. With all your soul, which means you got to be willing to die for God. And after that, it says, and with all your money. You'd think that you'd give your money before your life, right? But there are some people that are willing to give up their life before they're willing to part with their money. And case in point is what you're saying, right? There's a good joke from Jack Benny, who said this guy's walking down the street in Manhattan, he feels a gun in the back of his neck, and a gruff voice calls out, your money or your life? No answer. A few seconds later, the gruff voice repeats itself, and it says, your money or your life? And he says, I'm thinking.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying, Rabbi, is that's a choice I believe nobody should ever have to make. And that is what concerns me on one side, about everybody rushing back. And for those of you who heard our previous half hour, for those of you who didn't, what we're trying to say is there's a way to start to get back while still complying with social distancing, wearing masks and/or gloves. There are ways for people to work. There are ways for people to get back. All right? I like to think that from now on, we're going to look at life as pre-coronavirus and post-coronavirus.
Huh, interesting.
And our life post-coronavirus is going to be very different than our life pre. And I think the best likely scenarios are it's going to be at least another year before a vaccine can be approved, because of all the testing and development they have to do. But we're not going to wait a year to go to work if the job is waiting for us. For those of our listeners that could earn a living if things were opened up, how do you do that without risking your life? Okay. Because if you can't guarantee your safety, I believe you shouldn't go back to work.
I got to tell you, from a Torah perspective, you're not allowed to put your life in danger. If there's a legitimate threat to your life, you are not allowed to put your life in danger. You've got to make sure to be safe. So if you feel that you're immunocompromised, even if there is an opening, you should not venture out if that's considered dangerous, right? You have to check with a doctor who is a friend that can guide and counsel you through that. But there's an interesting study that was conducted that when human beings are given the choice between safety and convenience, which one do you think they choose?
Convenience.
Always convenience. It's always. They always go for convenience over safety.
Right,
that's why the choice was taken away from us in the quarantine. They say you are not allowed to go out because if you were given the choice, we would.
Okay, so now let's say somebody. Okay, let's talk about restaurants. I think that's a very common situation. Okay, here in Florida, we are used to. Well, maybe not you because you wouldn't go to the one. There's only one local restaurant you would go to.
Oh, we drive a little bit to go to a kosher restaurant,
Like Boca.
Yeah, we'll drive. That's considered close.
Well, for the rest of our listeners that are not
you probably never go to Boca for a restaurant, right? You got 100 choices on PGA Boulevard.
I'll go to a good steakhouse or fish house there.
Oh, you would?
Okay. That's okay. But for the rest of our listeners that are getting tired of cooking, that are getting tired of takeout, and want to enjoy the dining experience they're used to, it can be done, but under certain circumstances. Okay? First of all, they're going to have social distancing. I don't know how you wear a mask while you're eating. That's gotten very.
That's an interesting question.
So even if people are wearing a mask, I mean, I would assume all the workers should be wearing a mask. I don't see how you eat with a mask. And I guess the minute you remove the mask to put a fork in your mouth, you're exposing people potentially.
Right. And
so I'm not sure how we actually work that all out. But let's say that scientists or doctors come up with some way to do that. You're still going to have social distancing. So you're still going to have X distance, which means restaurants will not, clearly, I don't care what governors or presidents say, restaurants will not be able to open at full capacity for some time. It's just socially unacceptable. Okay, so now let's assume restaurants do open, and much like we were talking about in our last half hour, with us saying, okay, we'll count out how many people we can have social distance in our shul when we open. Let's say each restaurant does that same exercise. And each restaurant marks off where people can sit.
Okay.
So that it's socially acceptable, socially distanced. What does that mean? Restaurants are still going to they're going to have to serve less meals. They're going to make less money. They're going to need less employees. Okay? But let's say you are a restaurant worker and you want to return to work, and you're willing to return to work under these conditions, where you will wear a mask, everybody in the kitchen will wear a mask and gloves. So that because people have to have confidence that when they leave the house, they have to have confidence it's going to be safe. I mean, right now, even when people go out for bare essentials, I mean, I went to put gas in my car. I put on rubber gloves, these gloves. I put on a mask, just to do something as simple that we took for granted as putting gas in the car.
Yeah.
Now, a restaurant and shopping too. People, you go in this. I don't know if you've been to a supermarket lately, Rabbi. I'm sure
everybody's in masks.
Everybody's protected.
Yeah.
It may be the only time they leave their sheltered house is to get bare necessities.
But Mitch, I'm curious to know, what do you tell people that are going through the economic crisis? How do you help someone? What do you say from a financial advisor's perspective to people that are going through financial anxieties right now?
Well, Tori, I'll answer your question, and I'd like you to answer that same question.
Sure.
Okay, I'll answer it from my perspective.
Sure.
I'm cautioning people to conserve money. I mean, unfortunately, so many people live paycheck to paycheck with not enough savings. And I've also always counseled people, you have to save up so you have at least 6 months of expenditures, necessary expenditures saved up. But not everybody can accomplish that. I think if you have 6 months saved up, you should be fine. But let's say you don't. There's so many people live paycheck to paycheck or Social Security check to Social Security check. because that's their only source of income. And they were never able to save. You have to put food on the table. You have to pay for your medicines. That, to me, is number one. Beyond that, you can reach out to anybody else you owe money. Explain the situation. And in most states, they cannot evict you. Your house cannot be foreclosed on. And the utility companies can't cut your power.
Oh, that's good.
So, in addition to which, your lease payments, if you call them up, in all likelihood, they're gonna give you a break.
Car lease?
Yes. Same thing with insurance payments, and of course, I've heard many car insurance companies are giving rebates because nobody's using that car. It's being used a fraction of what it was used before. So obviously, there's so many less claims filed with insurance companies.
Sure.
Right now. I say that's the most important thing. You have to have money to pay for those things. Now, if you're on Social Security, not much has changed. You're on Social Security, if you're on a pension, those things are coming in. However, if you are depending on a wage, on a paycheck that is now not coming in, that is a very, very scary situation, especially if you're having so much trouble getting on the unemployment insurance you're entitled to.
Yeah.
So the biggest advice I give to people is spend on food and medicine first. What are you telling people?
So from a spiritual perspective, I've got a whole different angle. I'm not giving them the advice as to how to spend their money. For that, I defer them to you and to the financial professionals. But from a spiritual perspective, I'm trying to deal with the heart of the issue, with the fear that lies behind the question. And what I'm really spending a lot of time telling people is that fear is the worst poison you can ever deal with. Just like FDR said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. You see, as long as you're thinking that the blessing, the source of your livelihood comes from your employer, it comes from your wages, it comes from your dividends or from your stock market or from your investments. If that's what you feel is the source of your livelihood, then it's a very terrifying experience to realize that might have gone cold turkey. It might have stopped in its tracks. But when you're able to stop, meditate, and focus, and realize that the source of your livelihood is not from those sources, it comes only through them from God Almighty. And God Almighty is all powerful. God is kind and loves us unconditionally. With that approach, you can allow the fear to be replaced with a sense of serenity, knowing that I'm always in the hands of God. Everything will end up okay. And like we say in Hebrew, Gam ze ya'avor. Have you ever heard of that expression, Mitch? Gam ze ya'avor.
I'm not in Yiddish, but I've heard it.
It's in Hebrew. That's Hebrew.
No, but I've only heard it in English.
This too shall pass, right? This too shall pass. Why do I know that? Because God is always in control. So right now, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. It's a test. It's a challenge. It's a difficult period. Maybe it's a test of my faith. Maybe that's what it is. Because you know what? We can very easily grow complacent, receiving, since the last recession in 2010. When did that thing end? 2009, 2010? Since the last recession, we've had a good run for a solid decade. Yeah. I think they said that the last decade was the only decade in history without a recession. I think that was the headline on December 31st.
Okay, that could be.
Yeah, we had no recession.
It was a great decade.
And it was what? It was a great decade. We all did very well, thank God. But it's very easy to grow complacent. Perhaps this is a message from God who's saying, listen, I want you to remember that the source of your blessing isn't from where you think it is. It's not from the bank, and it's not from the investment or from the job that you have. It actually comes from me, and God wants us literally to look up to heaven and recognize Him as the source of our blessing. When you exhibit fear, you're showing that you don't trust God. When you replace fear with hope, with trust, that's what shows us and God that we have the right focus. And in the words of the Chabad Hasidic philosophy, the blessing is there for us, but trust is the faucet. When there is trust in God, then the blessing flows freely. When there is no trust in God, then the faucet is closed. So the liquid or whatever, the resources are there, but when the faucet is closed, it's not going to help you. And that's what I'm counseling with people, is don't be afraid. I encourage you to take out a book of Psalms. Take out a book of King David's Psalms, and we've uploaded it for you for your convenience online. You can find the book of Psalms in English on our website. It's at jewishgardens.com/crisis.
And I really respect that, Rabbi, and I think that's wonderful. And I also agree people should be reading something to be inspired and to feel like it's okay. And I also just want to emphasize to people that the most important things you should be able to provide for. You may not have money to pay your credit card bills. You may not have money to pay your rent. But you should not be kicked out because of it.
So you can't be evicted now if you don't pay your rent?
I believe that those are the rules.
I think everybody understands right now. Yeah. Everybody knows that there's something.
It doesn't mean you'll never have to pay back. There's various ways of dealing with it, such as adding it onto the back end.
How can people contact you, Mitch, if they need help?
The best way is via email. It's mzachary, Zachary, at zacharyfinancial.com. That's really the best way to reach me.
And if you'd like to
I'll be glad to answer your questions and anything I could do. And the Rabbi knows that, I have clients that pay me to help them. But if I could do a mitzvah for any of our listeners, I'd be very happy to do it.
Use promo code Schmooze right now. I'm joking. I'm Rabbi David Vigler, and I'm always available for you too. If you can always feel free to send me an email to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. That's rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Would love to hear from you to help you through this crisis. Know that we are all in this together. These are difficult times, but everything is under control of God Almighty. God has his own plans. He's got his own arrangements. And as Jewish people, we don't really get too stressed out, because we know our faith is so strong that God knows what's going to happen. It's a lot like a roller coaster ride. When you're on the roller coaster ride, it goes up, it goes down, it goes upside down and sideways and under the waterfall and through, and you could be very scared. But if you know that this roller coaster has a designer, somebody built this thing and it's even insured, right? And it's got a plan, and it goes this and that and the other, but eventually it's going to come to a very comfortable stop. Everything's going to be good in the end. If you knew that the roller coaster was really going to end up comfortably, you'd be okay. So what we're going through right now is a major flip on the roller coaster ride. Right now what we need to do is to connect with the Psalms of King David. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. That is Psalms 23. There are so many of those Psalms in the book of Psalms that can really affirm our faith, and I encourage you to find them. Cast your worries, your burdens upon God. He will be there to carry you. This is all in the book of Psalms. You can find those Psalms available for your convenience for complimentary download or upload or whatever. Is at jewishgardens.com/crisis. That's jewishgardens.com/crisis, where you can find the Psalms that you need to help carry your faith, to strengthen your faith, and reaffirm it in these very difficult times.
Thank you, Rabbi. That's very inspiring.
Friends, you're not alone. God is with you. We are all in this together. Don't be afraid. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. Strengthen your connection with God. Give a little charity. Do another mitzvah. Study a little Torah. Read some Tehillim. Read some Psalms. Strengthen your faith. Strengthen your trust. And God will bless you. Think good, and it will be good is our motto. Tracht good, think positive, and it will be good. God will bless us in the most beautiful way possible.
And still always be safe. Even as we open up to our listeners, please do it in a way you're comfortable with. Don't ever make that choice between your livelihood and your life.
We're so busy making a living, don't forget to actually live.
That's right.
Thank you very much, everybody. Shalom, and we'll see you, God willing, next week. And to our Facebook and YouTube listeners, I want to say thank you for joining us here. Any comments coming in before we wrap it up? I thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Georgie. Oh, Andrew. I missed your comment, Andrew. I'm so sorry. Hey, guys, loving this discussion. Great points, but good reminder that the main function of the mask is to prevent you from exposing others to the disease that you carry,
Right.
Especially with the disease that is so often asymptomatic. The masks don't do a great deal to protect the wearer.
That's true.
With regard to the restaurant experience and protecting yourself, the mask helps. But the bigger issue is watching what your hands touch, and then watching that your hands touch your own face. Minimally good stuff enjoying it. Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate your insightful comment there. Dan Gicher says, good advice, Mitch. Thank you. Andrew says, amen on fear. No fear, my friends. No fear gets a whole new meaning to that motto. Daniel, great conversation. Enjoying it. Jonathan Berkowitz, Gavin Meltz. I think you're from South Africa, right? Great to have you guys with us. And I want to say to you all, over and out. Shalom. Oh, and the Alex, Warren and Helen Alec, all the way from the East Coast, from Singer Island. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And we're going to make it through this. Thank you. Thank God. God bless you all. Sign off on YouTube.
Come on, that was better than talking about the other stuff.
Yeah.